Yes, good afternoon. I'm wondering, Dr. Tam, there's a lot of hope being placed in the vaccine, and we've seen some reports of positive results from some vaccine trials. They're in phase 3. But there also seems to be a lot of people who think once that vaccine is approved, that this pandemic will be over. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that. What happens once that vaccine is approved, and how realistic it is for a timeline for us to be able to return to a much more normal life once we get a vaccine?
Thank you. That's a really important question. And I think it is amazing that the world has come together and there are so many vaccine candidates that's being evaluated. And some, as you say, there's been several of them that have initiated what we call phase 3 clinical trials. And these are much larger than initial phase 1 and 2 trials, where smaller numbers of people have been vaccinated to look at safety and to look at the immune response, for example. In these phase 3 trials, what the clinical trials objectives are looking at, of course, are safety profiles, which are very important, and then looking at the efficacy or the effectiveness of the vaccine. We call efficacy when it's in phase 3 trials. So you're looking at tens of thousands of people as opposed to a smaller number or a few hundred people, for example. So we will be able to then characterize the vaccine's effects on the immune system a bit more in depth, and looking at a broader range of potential adverse events. And it still will be outstanding questions, even after phase 3 trials, on the degree and the duration of the immunity. How many doses of vaccine do we need? Do we need a booster later on? Some of it, the success of the vaccination program will also depend on how the virus is undergoing evolution. Would it change? Would the current vaccine need to be adapted if the virus should change? So there's quite a lot of unknown questions. But what we will see is that as phase 3 trials get underway, we will have much more information to go on in terms of the next stage, which is scaling up the use of the vaccine in the wider population. And even at that stage, we need to monitor very carefully the effectiveness, but also the safety when it's being administered to a bigger population. So all to say is that we have to use all avenues to try and get a vaccine or even more than one vaccine for the Canadian population. But really, honestly, we don't know at this stage whether the vaccine, how effective the vaccine is going to be, whether it prevents serious illness and hospitalizations. Does it prevent you actually getting an infection? Because some vaccines, influenza vaccines, for example, prevents you from maybe serious outcomes, but doesn't necessarily prevent you from getting the infection altogether. So these questions remain unknown. So I would say that vaccine is a very important aspect of the response going forwards, but we can't at this stage just put all of our focus on in the hopes that this is the silver bullet solution. It is a very important solution if we get a safe and effective vaccine. But I would say that the public health measures that we have in place, the sort of personal, daily measures that we take, is going to have to continue. And quite honestly, a lot of it is good personal hygienic practices that we should sustain in the long run anyways. So I think in terms of timelines, a lot of the companies looking at phase 3 clinical trials are really hoping that they'll get some results by the end of this year. Some of them are very ambitious. Some of them are saying, well, maybe the beginning of next year. But that still doesn't mean that we have vaccines for everyone. It's likely that there won't be enough vaccines for the population as as the vaccine rolls out. So there'll be prioritization. They'll be looking at that. So I think we're in it. We're planning as a public health community that we're going to have to manage this pandemic, certainly over the next year, but certainly maybe planning for the longer term of the next 2 to 3 years, during which the vaccine may play a role, but we don't know yet. I would say that I do agree with Dr. Fauci in the United States that we can be cautiously optimistic, but not, it's one important layer of protection. We also don't understand, as I said, the immunity of the human body to the virus and the vaccine. So much needs to be learned. I'm taking a bit more time answering this question because I think it's worth, in the next while, for us to keep Canadians informed as to what's going on and what clinical trials mean. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, it's Dr. Njoo. Maybe I just would add on to what Dr. Tam has said. She gave a very comprehensive answer. And I think the bottom line, I think, as the question was asked, is that, people might think that if we get a vaccine, then everything, quote, goes back to normal the way it was before. And that's not the case. As Dr. Tam and others have mentioned, a vaccine will not be a silver bullet. It'll certainly be an important tool. It'll be something that hopefully we can use to effective purpose for a large part of the population, or certainly certain vulnerable populations. But all of the measures we've put in place now will still have to continue with that new reality for quite some time. So certainly I think we need to temper people's expectations, thinking that the vaccine is going to be that silver bullet that will take care of everything, and everything we've done up to now won't be necessary in the future. Thank you.